Latifa al-Gurg. Welcome to Watch Her by The Watch Box. We are here to interview you for the Watch Her Create episodes.
Thank you for having me here. It's an honor and a privilege, honestly, to be here.
It's our honor and our privilege. Latifa, you are a prominent Emirati designer. You have a very interesting and exotic background. Your father is Emirati and your mother is Danish. You've also created the brand Twisted Roots, which takes a lot of inspiration from various cultures. Tell me about Twisted Roots and why the fascination with other cultures.
Twisted Roots is a women's wear brand, and my fascination with travel and different cultures stems from not only my mixed heritage, but also learning from others. So I've always loved going and exploring different cultures, and when it came to bringing a brand, I thought that would be my point of difference and my kind of perspective coming through, learning from other cultures, bringing through their perspectives through the lens of my own.
I'm actually wearing a design by you right now, which is inspired by the Japanese culture, and I love the kimono meets sabaya effect, so I think that's a very nice combination that you've created.
Thank you. It was inspired by a lot of the Japanese art. This one actually has a traditional Japanese print on it, and it's a unique way that they use the printing process.
It's actually beautiful. It's one of my favorite pieces from your collection.
Thank you.
You're wearing an Audemars Piguet Royal Oak, and it's a beautiful watch with a simple silver dial. So from this simplicity, I'd like to talk about your childhood. So, growing up in a house whereby your father is Emirati, your mother is Danish, you have this whole East meets West situation going on. How did you feel about that, and what was your childhood like?
Well, I don't know how much it's East meets West, because my mother assimilated completely to the culture here.
East
meets East. But there are aspects, of course, that come in from the West, and from Denmark especially. Denmark is a very laid-back country, and they focus on nature and the simple things in life. I think that came in very strongly in our upbringing. My childhood was one of adventure and imagination and exploration. It was a very happy childhood, I have to say.
That's beautiful. So I grew up in Iraq, and I remember that my older brother used to go to these house parties. And I used to go with my father to pick him up late at night. And one night, I remember my father looked at me and he said, "Inti, there is no way I would let you go to such parties." And I thought to myself, if going to these parties is wrong, then it's surely wrong for my brother too. And if going to these parties is right, then why am I being denied that?
Definitely.
So that's when I became aware of the fact that there was a different set of rules that my older brother operated by than what I was allowed to do. So was there a moment in your childhood when you experienced something like that, this double standard?
In our house, I wouldn't say so much. Like, between myself and my brother is a year and a half. We were very close. Our friends were the same. Mm-hmm. We did everything together. So my parents didn't really define gender roles within the children. My father was all about fixing things around the house, and I was his assistant. So I didn't see even that stuff as a male-dominated area or the female. And we were we were close to our cousins, and they were also mixed gender. So everything was always about the group. Mm-hmm. So I didn't see it so much until much later, I think, like until I went to university. And surprisingly, it came from students rather than the professors that I saw, that I would feel a little bit different. No, you're a woman, maybe you shouldn't be doing this, or just small hints, but it never really took a large space in my life because of my upbringing and where we were all treated equally.
What were the expectations on you? Were you expected to participate in charity or to have a career or to get married? What were the roles that you had to fulfill?
We were taught to kind of go your own path, and find your purpose. more than a defined expectation within their limits. Yes, they did hint at things. My mother hinted, why don't you look at mental health, let's see, or a nurse or a teacher. And my father did hint about, oh, you're my assistant, you will take over the business, and you go into engineering. So there was a lot of hinting, but they didn't really, I don't think they pushed it on us or forced it in any way.
You have a degree in electrical and electronic engineering, which tends to be seen as a more masculine domain. What made you interested in that field?
It was, I think, the introduction of it at school, and engineering has always played a part in my life. My father being a civil engineer, he always taught us about putting things together, taking them apart, fixing things. So it kind of lent itself to a natural path.
So from what I hear, you like the whole idea of putting things together and taking them apart, which is what engineering gives you.
Yeah, and the methodology. So I still hold it dear to my heart. The engineering has led me on so many new paths, and it's the way I run my life on a daily basis.
Well, speaking of structure and mechanics, you're wearing an Audemars Piguet Tourbillon, which is a very complicated watch. So I want to move into the whole engineering, complicated aspect of your life. You mentioned earlier that there were some male colleagues in your department that were not very welcoming to the idea of you being there. Can you tell me a story that illustrates that?
There was a time, I can think of a couple of times, once that we were put into groups at university to work together, and there were a couple of people who didn't appreciate to be in a group with some women. So they had actually asked that we be moved out of the group, which I found quite frustrating. If they wanted to move the group, maybe they should move.
Yeah.
But a couple of times we came to that, but thankfully the professors were very understanding, and they handled it in a very diplomatic manner.
I'd like to hear about your graduation. What was that like for you?
My graduation was a little complicated.
Just like your watch?
Just like my watch. I had gotten married while I was at university, and I actually had my firstborn on my last exam. I went from the exam to the hospital and had Abdullah.
Serious?
Yeah, it was. I blamed the seats for the pain in the class, but it was actually I was in labor. And so when my graduation was 6 months after I had Abdullah, so it was an exciting turning point. I think more about his growth than mine, because when you're in that fast track, you don't get to appreciate those moments. But it was an amazing moment. He wore his gown, I wore my gown. We took pictures. I attended it with all my classmates. And we all felt a sense of purpose and moving on, and this excitement of what the world has to give us.
That's amazing. I'm just curious, what kind of questions were on that exam that induced you to labor? That must have been a very hard exam.
Yeah, it was an electrical power exam. So it was a lot of thinking globally about electric circuits and how to plan for a country's wide electrical circuit.
Latifa, you are wearing an Omega DeVille Ladymatic jeweled watch. It's a very valuable watch, and it definitely shows that you know what you like, and you like things of value. So you made a switch from being an engineer to launching your own fashion label. That's a huge jump. What made you do that, and how does one thing add value to the other?
It might seem like a large jump, but the way my journey took me and the path I was on didn't make it seem like a large jump. It was at a time where I had taken a break from working to raise my kids, and we were traveling a lot. as a family, and I like to dress modestly when I travel. However, there was nothing in the market that I could find that was of my aesthetic and addressed my modesty needs. At the same time, I saw an ad in a magazine for short courses given by London College of Fashion, and I thought that's an interesting area to explore, and decided to take a course just to see what it was about, and it was about establishing your own brand. I then took another course and led to 9 courses from London College of Fashion, and through my journey there, the idea of Twisted Roots came up.
You know, being an entrepreneur is quite scary because you're kind of venturing on your own, you're launching something that may or may not work. In your case, thank God it worked. Did you ever have these moments of fear where you questioned, why am I doing this? Is this a bad idea? Should I stop?
Definitely. Of course, there is a large fear factor. There's always doubt. But I trust in my path. I don't believe in the concept of failure. It's just something to learn from.
So for you, it was always going to be a win-win because in the worst case scenario, you were going to learn something that you didn't know before.
Definitely.
You run a factory in Al-Quds, and you have a lot of men who work in this factory who come from cultures that don't necessarily accept a female boss. Did you ever face any resistance from your employees?
There is a little bit of resistance from time to time, but I think it's the way you approach it that kind of diffuses the resistance. So in the beginning, I didn't think it would be an issue, and it's never been a large issue. Mm-hmm. It's always been a few certain instances that you just tackle with a little bit of lightheartedness and overcome it. So it's just saying, okay, is this because I'm a woman? Well,
tough luck.
I'm still your boss, and it's okay.
Would you say that you are raising your daughter exactly the same way that you're raising your sons, or are there differences?
I wouldn't say it's exactly the same because I don't believe in equality as much as parity.
Okay, can you elaborate?
So each person has something to bring in, and it depends more on your personality than your gender. Mm-hmm. So I treat her and I expect of her what comes with her as a person, rather than her being a girl or a boy. So I have 3 kids, Abdullah, Hanalina, and Faisal. What Abdullah brings is different than what Faisal brings, even though they're of the same gender. Mm-hmm. So I believe in nurturing their strengths and supporting their weaknesses as a person, rather than if they're a boy or a girl.
So it's about their personalities, it's about their interests, it is not about their gender?
Definitely, yes.
Okay, excellent. I want to shift the spotlight back to you. You've achieved a lot in the past few years. You won the design competition for Expo 2020 for the uniform designs. And you're also one of 6 mentors for the One of Not Many mentorship program. Yeah. Can you tell me a little bit about both of these projects?
The Expo 2020 uniform design competition meant a lot to me. It was my chance to kind of show what Expo 2020 would mean to Dubai and how Dubai will highlight itself and highlight its culture. And that's where we brought in the designs that resonate with the whole, not only culture, but the history of Dubai. And being picked as the winner, I can't even express how much of a privilege it was, and how much of an honor it was to be recognized in that aspect.
What about the mentorship program? What does that mean to you?
It's been really eye-opening and inspiring. We were paired, it's through Vacheron Constantin, Zayed University, and Tea Before Noon, and they paired us with young students from Zayed University to kind of help them visualize their path. And I've been paired with a girl called Hind, and she's so inspiring to me. She has a vision, she's clear on her thought process. I'm able to show her my path that I took, and she's able to kind of adapt it and figure out how it fits in with her path. We're working together on it, and it's so refreshing to see how open these students are and how willing they are to go to all bounds to learn.
Kind of like you. So if you are to sit right now and address Latifa, who is 8 years old, what would you say to little Latifa?
Play, explore, learn, yeah.
Okay. And if 8-year-old Latifa is now 18-year-old Latifa, what would you say to her?
I got engaged at 18.
Okay.
And everything was in a rush. So I would say relax. Take your time. It's okay. Enjoy the moments instead of being in a heightened state. So just relax. Take a moment.
Okay. And if you were to fast forward to the future, and now you are addressing 80-year-old Latifa, what would you say to her?
I think she should be addressing me.
That's a great answer.
Yeah. I don't know what I can offer somebody who's older and wiser. I think she should be addressing me.
Perfect. Thank you, Latifa.
Thank you, Katya.